This is the first time many of our partners have met you. So let's start with a little bit about your story. Maybe give us a minute on how you got to this point in time.
It's not that interesting, but I was born in India. I emigrated to Canada when I was 8 years old. Kind of interesting story. I had asthma when I was a kid, so the air quality in Delhi was not fantastic. So my parents made a pretty aggressive decision to just kind of sacrifice. And so we moved to Canada. I grew up there. I did my undergrad degree at the University of Waterloo in computer engineering. I quickly realized that I was not a very prolific computer engineer, and so I went to the immediate next adjacent thing, which is product management. I started working at Microsoft, spent the first decade of my career there. I left Microsoft. I did a whole bunch of stuff at Microsoft. I was a speechwriter for the chairman, a lot of product stuff, a lot of engineering stuff. And then I left and went to an early stage startup and quickly realized that my overpriced Microsoft education was pretty worthless. I had to kind of relearn everything. I had to learn how to hustle. I had to learn how to work hard, how to put desks together. And the startup experience was unbelievable. Startup was moderately successful, got acquired by Groupon. I don't know if those of you that remember the early stage Groupon when daily deals really started to take off. And so I was a part of that pre and post IPO. At that point, it was like the fastest growing company of all time, and then it was the fastest crashing company of all time as well. So I spent a couple of years there, and then I moved to PayPal where I ran the consumer division. And I started to switch from more of a B2B focus into a pure consumer focus. So I spent about the first half of my career building products for businesses, helping them run and grow, and then the second half almost entirely in consumer. So spent a couple years at PayPal. I was the chief product officer of the consumer division. Then I went to Intuit, and I started learning all kinds of fun things about tax. And so I was one of the first VPs of product for TurboTax. Introduced a product called TurboTax Live, which was the fastest growing product in Intuit's history. And just saw a lot of data, saw a lot of interesting things about the financial system. I think I started to develop a little bit more of a cause around just wanting to make the system better. And lo and behold, this little company called Rocket came calling, and I spent some time with Dan, came to Detroit, and just fell in love. And I fell in love for like one really simple reason, which is that I really believe that home ownership is the bedrock of the American dream. And all of you and all of us represent that dream. And that dream is not a reality for so many people. And very deeply, I just think like a community of people needs to be in defiance of that dream, that we have to stand for it, we have to represent it, we have to defend it, we have to protect it. And in many ways, home ownership is really kind of the last frontier of fintech. It really is the only true fintech. And so fell in love with the culture, fell in love with the team, fell in love with Detroit, and it's been a fun 2 years. Here I am.
Amazing.
And also, I just want to say also, thank you all for being here. I mean, this is a huge investment in your time. It's a huge investment in us building community together, and it really means a lot to us that you're taking the time to come and hang out with us. Appreciate it.
Love that. So you got here to Rocket, and you put together a literal blueprint. The document was called The Blueprint. And when I got my first look at it, I was really struck by how much brokers and the wholesale business was like a fundamental piece of it.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about that before I joined Rocket. And so as kind of like a non-mortgage person coming in, how did that like come about for you?
Yeah, you know, I got to Rocket, and it was interesting. I'm the first outside CEO in a company that's been around for 40 years, right? So it's like, well, what do I know, right? And the reality is, I know certain things. I don't come from this business. I don't come from this industry. I do come from technology and fintech. But there are a lot of smart people at Rocket, and there's a lot of perspective, and there's a lot of just ideas. And so we embarked on this process together with the leadership team. I pulled the top 30 folks in the organization together. And we just asked ourselves the question together. We said, what is our next chapter? And one of the ways that we exercised that was in the creation of this artifact. And this artifact really utilized some best practices that I've learned over my career. And one of the best practices is really the narrative format. And so we got out a PowerPoint. Amazon really, I think, is one of the few companies that I think really practices this, which is writing things down in long form narrative. You can hide in a PowerPoint, but when you have to write down your perspective, it forces you to use facts per second. It forces you to avoid conjecture and assertions. It forces you to pressure test your thinking. And so we split up the leadership team into groups, and we asked them to tackle different parts of our business, everything from our mission to our strategy to our core priorities to even our culture, a culture that is still static, right? A culture is a function of people, and people are dynamic, they're creative, they're diverse, they evolve. And so we put these teams together, and we went through this process of writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting. And it's a very cathartic process because, you know, where you start and where you end are almost always different. But the biggest thing I would say is that, you know, I wasn't here to write like another book for this company. The book was already being written. The purpose of this was to write the next chapter of this book. And what was interesting to me when I came here is that I just realized that, I mean, one, the market is massive. The housing market is the biggest market on the planet, 20% of the GDP, $5 trillion of total addressable market. And it's not just about retail, right? The broker community, the broker business is a huge part of the market. And in many ways for me, it was like a really cool throwback because I finally got an opportunity to bring my B2B experience and my direct-to-consumer experience together, and to think about how you build a platform that extends toward both. And so, you know, even in the first days, it was immediately obvious to me that this is a community that we need to nurture, that we need to invest in, that we need to cultivate leadership around. And that's a big part of what we're doing, right? Is that this is a one-way door that we are seriously invested in. You know, I would argue over the years, maybe our investment has fluctuated a little bit. But if there's one thing that I would share with all of you is that we are here to stay. We are here to grow. We are here to enable you. Dan Nagoy said it really well. This isn't about us, it's about you. If we see what you see, if we know what you know, we will serve you. We will serve you to the ends of the earth. And so it was a core part of the blueprint process. It was a core part of our strategy, and we are just getting started.
You've been such a strong supporter of this business, and I just want to thank you for that because it's been really fun to get to execute on this with your backing. So I wanted everybody to know that. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. So I think everybody can tell, like, you're a pretty chill dude.
Can you? I don't know. Sometimes.
You are. But
I have good days and bad days.
you have good days and bad days. But also, like, you're like a dog with a bone when it comes to things like production, market share, maximizing our use of AI, data, metrics, like you said, you know, facts per second. Like, you're so aggressive on those things. And like, how do you manage, or how did this combination of intensity and ambition, but also like this super high level of empathy, like, develop in you?
It's a good question. I don't know, man. But I guess, you know, in some ways, I think when I was younger, I was incredibly ambitious and driven in terms of like career. You know, when you're young, everyone's like, you got to have like a 5-year plan. You got to have a 10-year plan. I want to make this much money by this date. I want to get to this level. I want to have this sort of vision for what my life is like. And it's actually amazing. You know, I think as you grow and you mature, you start to realize that there's so much that you don't control in life. There's things that will happen to you that you will never expect, that you will never realize. And the second thing is that you start to appreciate just flow a little bit more. And I think, you know, as I moved toward kind of the second half of my career, I found myself like letting go a lot more, you know, and not trying to sort of fight against a current if the current is flowing in the other direction, or if the current is flowing with you, just swimming really fast so you can swim as fast as possible. And so I started to appreciate that flow state kind of a lot more. And it's funny, you know, when that started to happen, it's like the rest of it just kind of took care of itself. Like life sort of has its own plan. It's not to say that everything is non-deterministic, but it's more to say that I just think I developed more of an appreciation for just accepting what is and what could be. But at the same time, I have a very healthy appetite for risk. I do think life is short. I do think you have to take big swings. And I appreciate people. I think one of the things that I think is really important when you're running a large organization at scale is you just can't do it alone. It's not an organization where one superstar comes in and just lays it all down. It's just not how you create scale. The best teams are environments where people can feel like they can contribute, that they can bring perspective. And so I try really hard to listen to people. I try really hard to get different perspectives. Can't say that I always agree with everybody, but the most important thing for me in a boardroom or with my leadership team is that everyone gets a voice, everyone gets a vote. And if you can leave a conversation feeling like, at least I said what I was going to say, at least I got my point across, at least I was listened to, then you're a little bit more okay with whatever the outcome of that particular conversation is. And so I just have tried to embody that philosophy and have had to try to balance it with some healthy risk taking. I definitely believe philosophically it's way better to take a big swing and miss than to take like a small swing and hit, because you just don't know what you're capable of. And if you miss, guess what? You still learn, you still grow, you still develop something. You may not realize it in the moment, but you will a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, a year later.
I love that. I think a lot of the folks in the room can relate to that. A lot of brokers and broker owners took a risk, right? Left a job, struck out on their own, started a company, took a big swing, and a lot of you have been super successful. So I love that. Let's talk about team for a second too. As you mentioned, one of your superpowers is assembling killer teams. So maybe just talk a little bit about that at Rocket and a little bit about that at Rocket Pro, because again, before I joined Rocket, when I started seeing the caliber of people you were hiring, that was like a big eye opener, right? It was like, I never thought I'd work at a mortgage company, but I was like, this is something different. Like, what's this guy doing?
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and I would also say that, it's, in some ways you get lucky, right? Rocket is not a company in need of a turnaround. It is it's a great company. It has a great leadership team. It has incredibly strong, passionate, hardworking, competitive, driven leaders that know what they're doing. And so a part of my sort of realization was that, it wasn't that, what got us here is going to get us there, but the biggest word that I would use when building our leadership team is balance. And what I really focused on was really figuring out, how do we create a balanced business, a balanced leadership team? There were a few areas that I knew we had to go really big on. Our brand, our awareness, our consideration. We have to become a household brand. I've got my man Jonathan Mildenhall sitting here. I'm sure you're going to hear from him later. He's the best in the world. There's no one better on this planet that understands how to build a consumer brand. You see that in our commercials now. You see that in our efficacy. You see that in just what we mean. And so Jonathan and I have a very common aligned belief on something like marketing, which is that marketing is about creating memories that last forever. It's not about this like little joke that you remember once that goes away an hour or two later. That's not our style of marketing anymore. It is about something that is anthemic. It's about something that's emotional. It's about creating a moment that is so powerful that you'll remember it for the rest of your life. And I knew that's the kind of marketer that we needed at Rocket, because that's the kind of brand we are. If we make 30-year bets on people that make 30-year bets on themselves, how can our commercials not reflect that? How can that not be in our look and feel? How can that not be in just what we stand for? And so, marketing is just one example where I was like, we need someone that understands that. We were about to go into the AI revolution, and it's here. Mark my words, it is here. This is not a fad, this is a big deal. And we're going to do amazing things for you with our technology platform. We're going to build tools, capabilities that are unheard of. It will feel like a completely different world, I think, in the next 18 to 24 months. And we needed a technology leader who understood that and understood that transformation. And so we brought in Sean. Sean is someone that I have a lot of history with as well. We actually went to college together. He was the smartest guy in the class. I was maybe somewhere near the bottom. But he was at Intel building chips. He was at Thomson Reuters driving major transformation in media. And he understands AI better than anybody else. And I was like, he is the right person to lead us into this transformation. We thought about our board. We needed to think about a board where we had board members that understood where the world is going in the next 5 to 10 years, right? It's not just AI, it's robotics, it's 3D printing, materials engineering. What a time to be alive. So I talked to Alex Rampell, who runs the fintech practice at Andreessen, and he is maybe the most prolific mind in fintech. And I said, hey, look, let's have a conversation. And so I would say each person from and we'll talk about Pro in just a second, but I would say each member of the leadership team, both the leaders that were within the company and the leaders that were outside, were extremely handpicked. And they were handpicked also because they could get along with each other. This is a group of people who could be in a room together. They could laugh together. They could argue together. They could cry together. I look at Heather Levier, our COO, phenomenal leader, lives and breathes the soul of this company, right? Understands every nook, every cranny, right? I look at Bill Banfield, right? One of the coolest people, understands capital markets, understands serving, pricing, licensing, hedge desks. I look at Brian Brown, phenomenal CFO. So, as we were bringing in folks from the outside, we elevated folks from within as well. And we have completely rebuilt the broker leadership team as well. And I have to say credit to you, Dan, credit to Corey, Mike Fawaz, Dan, Katie Sweeney. I mean, I could go on, right? Kevin Randolph. But this is a new team. This is a new team. It's a new spirit. It's a new culture. I hope you can see it. I hope you can feel it. But this is the start of something special. And I'd also say that technology sort of bloodline was really important to me as well. I mean, Dan, you come from a technology background. You've built servicing technology, mortgage technology. And so it was very important to me that all of our leaders have more of a technology-centric view of the world, because that is one thing spiritually that really mattered to me. But balance, people that like to work together, people that want to win together, and just really more of a one-size-fits-one approach. That was the approach that I took.
Love it. It's been great. All right, so we basically just said we're tech guys, so let's launch some software.
Let's do it.
All right. So we're going to do our second launch right now. Brokernearme.com. Okay? So let's take a look and then we'll talk about it. So we've heard a lot, we talked about marketing, we talked about Rocket being world-class, and what we've heard from you over, certainly me over the last year, but we've heard it in the past, is like, we love Rocket's marketing, but how does that really help me as a broker in my local community? So we're making a commitment, we're launching this today. We are gonna market brokernearme.com. Your profiles, if they're already in Salesforce, will automatically be uploaded and available. Consumers will find our marketing for that site. They'll go in and enter their address, and if you're in their community and offer the products and services that they want, you will be there. They'll be able to press a button and call you, press a button and text you, and we're gonna roll big with this starting today. So awesome. What's your thoughts on that, man?
Look, it's funny, I started a little bit with my career journey at Groupon, and one of the things that I just sort of fell in love with is just the idea of local, right? And in many ways, like the only way to be local is to be local, right? It's the Little League coaches, it's the parent-teacher organization presidents, right? It's volunteers in the community, and that's what brokers represent. And what I think is super cool about this, I had a chance to see a demo, is that like, there's no way to climb the ranking, right? And I think that's like one of those really cool things, which is that if you're the person that a consumer wants to connect with that's like 1 mile away, you're the one that they're gonna connect with, right? And this goes back to a little bit of the promises and all of the things that you shared, which is that we are all about choice. We are all about helping you run and grow your business. And I think this is pretty cool. And I think it's the first of much more to come.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you said. I mean, hyper-local is how we think about this business and consumer choice. And I just think, you and I have talked about it from like a software mindset of distribution, right? And the way that kind of manifests itself is like, we have broker partners on every street in America, right? And it's just a matter of helping connect you to the humans that need your help nearby. And I think sometimes in this industry, you can talk about things in a clinical way like leads, right? But this makes it more visceral in terms of this is a human being.
Every lead is a
who
person.
Now is connecting to you, right? And different than a list of 50 people that you're going out and trying to call, right? So we're trying to bring this new paradigm to life, and so hope you guys like it. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, a couple more questions here. We got a couple more minutes. Thank you. All right, I want to talk about two things on these transactions, and I want to relate it a little bit. You mentioned you like taking risk, and you said that to me again before I joined Rocket, and I wasn't really sure how much to believe you. And then you remember after you did Redfin, I was like, okay. And then you followed it up with Mr. Cooper. I'm like, okay, I guess checkmate, right? So you're a poker player, right?
A little bit, yep.
How does that feel like, pushing all your chips in when somebody, calls you to go all in?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it starts with conviction, right? And when I came to Rocket, one of the biggest realizations we had is that we live in such an adversarial industry. Like, why is that, right? Like, that was one of the fundamental realizations for me, is the consumer has to navigate each of these industries. They have to go through home search and work with a realtor. They then have to go through financing, work through either retail or a broker. They got to go through title, they got to go through closing, then they end up in servicing. And what was fascinating to me is that each of these are like microcosms in their own industries,
yeah,
with intensely competitive dynamics, right? You've got a lot of competition in the mortgage space, you've got a ton of competition in the home search and portal space, then you have an equal amount of competition in the servicing space, right? Everyone is squabbling with everyone else, and no one's really working together, but the consumer kind of just has to navigate each of these funnels. It's expensive, it's antiquated, it's complicated. And so we just had this pretty simple realization that was like, well, why couldn't we just connect those things and create a super funnel? And if we were to do that, wouldn't we improve lead flow? Wouldn't we have more personalization and more data and more signals? Wouldn't we be able to streamline the experience? Wouldn't we be able to offer potentially lower fees, better rates? And then wouldn't we just be able to build lifetime relationships with clients who end up being a part of the servicing journey and then recapture them and kind of bring them back into that top of funnel? So like, it's okay to take the risk if you have conviction in your strategy. And so that's what led to these acquisitions, is that it was very much focused on just saying, hey, look, we believe in this strategy. We think that distribution is key. If we can build more relationships with clients, we can create a singular funnel, we can create more access, more business. And by the way, all of that pertains to all of you as well, right? Like, when I think about B2B, I think about two words: run and grow, right? Run is all about products, capabilities, competitive pricing, but grow is about access to clients, right? It's about access to capabilities. Imagine white labeled servicing capabilities where you put your name on the mortgage statement, right? You have your relationship with the client, right? And that's what we see as pretty exciting about this, is that with Redfin and Mr. Cooper, we're building a massive lead distribution engine for our ecosystem to prosper and thrive and grow. So, I mean, it's a high conviction bet. Yes, it's two deals and which have not really been, I don't think it's really happened before, two public company deals announced in a month. The Mr. Cooper deal is the largest mortgage transaction, I think, in independent mortgage transaction in history. And we feel very fortunate because we found great partners in Redfin and Mr. Cooper that have a like-minded vision, that see things the way we see. And that was a big part of the deal too, is, it's not just about the intellectual, certainty of the strategy. I mean, I can sit here and talk about that all day, but at the end of the day, it comes down to people. And what I love about our leadership team, is that this is a team that wants to work together, that isn't forced to work together. This is a team that is very intentional about wanting to win together. That's what gives me conviction to push the chips in.
Love it. Yeah, this is going to be really impactful for the industry, and Varun and I have both teased things like private label servicing, white label servicing, lead flow out of Redfin, and so you're going to hear a lot more of that as we bring these companies together and really create this new paradigm for our partners to thrive. So really excited for that. Okay, last question. We rolled out the partner promises. Which one resonated most with you?
I have to pick one? Can I pick two?
You can pick two, sure. You're the boss.
Sometimes you get to capitulate. I'm going to go with, look, this is a little cliche, but I'm a technologist, so I'm going to go with 4 and 7. And I think 4 and 7 talk about AI and technology, but also the connection between human and AI.
Yeah.
And I do think we are entering a fantastic new world. You know, I think that this is not technology to be fearful of. I think this is something that will bring about a new renaissance in just how we work with people.
Yeah.
And so I like 4 and 7 because in some ways that really embodies a lot of our commitments to all of you. Is we're going to give you badass technology, but we're going to give you technology that enhances the human connection, that enhances your relationships with clients, and allows that human emotion and the psychology of what we do to thrive. You know, home ownership is one of, if not the most emotional experience a human being will go through. It's the biggest transaction in most of our lives. And it's often the things that signify life events in all directions. And so enhancing the human connection, betting big on tech, I'll go with 4 and 7.
All right. Well, thanks so much, man. Thanks for
Pleasure.
spending the time. Hope everybody got to know Varun.
Thank
a
you
little
all.
bit more. Let's give it up.
It was a great day.
Yeah. Appreciate it.